This is an extremely complicated issue that has been going on for a long time, so it's impossible to try to cover all that in a short period of time. But we wanted to try to bring you up to speed on what we know. I think this part that we're going to do now is the most important part, so we can start talking about what you want to talk about. So, Charlene and Tim, put up your hands. Everybody see Charlene and Tim. If you put up your hand, they will come to you with a microphone, and whichever one of us can best answer the question, we'll try.
I'm just curious. Like, I got a grazing permit in the forestry. Is what any of this that might happen, is that going to affect the cattle grazer guys?
Because of the might, the answer is technically yes. It would depend on what was made there, whether like if it's a wildland park, then there could be, my understanding is there could be rules that would still allow grazing. The issue with grazing has not been settled in the castle is also my understanding, so there's still a dispute going on about that. If it was a different type of park, I do think it could affect grazing, certainly. And again, because you don't know what the final product that's being proposed will do. My understanding is in the castle, that argument's been going on for quite a long time. I don't know if one of you guys know. Yeah.
Right,
good question, Graham.
My question's to the guy, you said that there's a RAC report guy in the room. My question to him is why the RAC report isn't released for the North Saskatchewan.
Oh, actually, yeah, no, he wouldn't, he wouldn't know. The RAC report is sitting in the minister's hands right now, and it's completely up to her as to when she's going to release it. Over the last 12 months, go back to last spring, it's going to happen in the summer. Oh, wait a minute, by the end of this summer, we're going to know for sure. It went through the fall, and we kept saying, okay, it's going to be released, and that it just keeps getting delayed. This is one of those we don't know answers. There's the premier and the minister are probably the only two people that really know how this is going to play out. So it's completely out of our hands, out of the RAC members. I mean, they want it released as well. I mean, we're kind of thinking we'd like to kickstart it. That's one scenario. The other scenario is that can we delay it until maybe we get a new government and then we play a different game.
13 months to go. I actually think this is a very important point, though. We have a process that was put in place that has been followed. There would have been a tremendous amount of money that has been invested in that process. My understanding from talking to people on the RAC is there is a report that is complete, and I believe that the government has to release that before. Well, I know they don't have to. Technically, they don't. But the reality is that should be released to the public for consumption before we make a decision what takes place out here. Why else did we go through it for the last several years? Tim, go ahead.
I have the question as far as now, if they did implement this stuff and they did put in these parks, now, if another government comes in, is it reversible? So
that's a big question as far as what exactly it would look like before. There are certainly things that could be reversible. One of the things that you've noticed is so much of the rules that could be put in place once it's changed into a wildland park, quite frankly, in its current format with PLUs and those type of things, can basically be done by cabinet. So it does not have to go to the legislature to, where we debate it, or it's not like a law that would be made in Edmonton. So the reality is a new government would have a tremendous amount of power to certainly make adjustments as far as restricted access, those type of things, particularly if it's a wildland park. Provincial park could be a little bit more complicated. As far as reversing the status, we're looking into exactly what that would look like. We don't fully understand it, but we certainly would have, with a new government, a lot of authority to be able to reverse restrictions on access into the park. Did that answer your question? Okay. The other thing is, the closer that this gets to the election, I would say the harder it is to see it be implemented in time before there would be a transition in government. The castle situation is still not done. That's been going on 2 years since they started it. Maybe a little bit longer. So this is not something you could just snap your finger and make happen. That's the reality. It doesn't matter what political party it is. It couldn't just happen in seconds. There's a lot of legal issues that are going to come up, those type of things. And so the closer you get to an election, the less there would have to be reversed.
Does the United Conservative Party have a standpoint on how they're going to deal with political pressure groups like the Yellowstone to Yukon initiative that could be a huge driving factor with this and the minister and the current government that we have?
Well, first of all, let's break that down in a couple sections. As far as outside organizations trying to influence what takes place in our province or communities, we're not concerned about the political pressure from them. We're concerned about what you, our boss, want us to do. Now, that's hard to figure out what the majority of Albertans will want to do. I think I do have a sense of what the majority of the people that I represent want to do on this issue. But our focus will be on what Albertans want with the West Country, not what outside organizations, particularly out of country organizations that are pushing it. The political, yeah, for sure. The political reality is that what is being used to sell this is what we care about. So what's happening is they're going to talk about protecting water, headwaters. Everybody in this room cares about protecting headwaters. They want to talk about protecting the environment in the West Country. Everybody in this room cares about protecting the environment. We love it. This is an area that we've been, many of us, for multiple generations have utilized. We have the greatest backyard in the world, and the idea that we don't want to protect it is ludicrous. The fact is, the only model that we have seen work, that I have seen work, is when we work with the community, stakeholders are utilizing it to make sure that it runs well. Because here's the fact, guys, you, the taxpayer, do not have enough money to give us to be able to hire everybody that could go out and enforce it. Anyway, we need to work with the people that are, and enforcement's an issue. I don't want to say we don't want to enforce it, Tom, before Tom gets mad at me. But the reality is we have to work with the people that are working in the community. And we've seen, I've seen some Eastern Slopes Foundation guys that are here, and I don't know how much, with the Tinda, that got shut down for a long time in the late 70s, early 80s. And then when we were able to bring in the stakeholders that utilize the trail system there, they've done a great job. It hasn't been perfect all the time, but they've done a really good job along the way. Now that's open to the public. It's being utilized. It's one of the premier horse riding destinations in the world. And it's worked because bureaucrats in Edmonton don't care about our backyard as much as we care about the backyard. So we need to educate people on what we're doing here already. We also have to celebrate some of the work that we've heard about tonight. So the Clearwater Trail Initiative, which is something that I think should now be expanded elsewhere. I think we've proven that it works well. It was a great project that we could utilize elsewhere on the Eastern Slopes. Our trail building guys and gals who have worked so hard. I was pretty impressed after I got elected. I spent some time with them and seeing just even the equipment that they invented to be able to go out and protect our trails. So don't tell me they don't care about the West Country and the environment. They care about it. But we have to go out and show the rest of the world what we know here that we've been doing in the West Country. And we also have to drive the bus on this one. We can no longer sit back and just hope that the government and people forget about us out here. We have to drive the bus, but we have been for a long time. And the problem now is it's hard for a politician like myself to go to like Cal and all these guys and say, hey, invest a bunch of money in trail initiative. Get a bunch of volunteers and let's go out in the West Country and let's maintain this. Because when they look me in the eye and they say, Jason, are you sure the government's not going to shut it down? I can't lie because I'm not sure that's going to happen. And so it's really hard to encourage people to want to be able to do the things that we have to do in the West Country with this constant threat of what will happen over our heads. For example, Cal, you may know the number. What was the number of how much trail work had went into the castle that got abandoned back there? It was significant.
500 or 700 kilometers in the castle.
Yeah, it was almost 800 clicks in the castle.
So it was a lot. Bridges, those type of things. The people that went and worked to try to make this process work out there did a great job. And that's tough now to look at all you guys and go, hey, let's go do all this when I can't guarantee what the government's going to do with the work that you did. That a good answer? Or did I answer it? That's what I want. Okay. Tim.
So I see there's a lot of opportunities for improvement probably in the land, but this is maybe more a question for the whole room. Do we actually have a problem? Or is this just people advocating for different groups trying to solve a problem that maybe isn't even there? Obviously, there's opportunity for improvement.
So I'm going to ask that question in a second and for you, and we'll get the room to respond with a show of hands. But I want to make sure everybody heard what that was. So the question was, do we actually have a problem, or is this some sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to put words in your mouth, this some sort of an ideological outside source that's trying to create a problem out of nothing. I do think, before I answer that, and I think the guys up here will agree with me, that we have had some problems in the past. We those of us who I see lots of my old friends when I lived on the Panther River Road there west of Sundre and on the Forestry Trunk Road that are here today. I can tell you it used to be when we worked the May long weekends back there that we were pretty scared to wake up the entire May long weekend. But we put together a task force that's been working well west of Sundre and west of Rocky Mountain House. And we've done the things to change it. The point is the community wants to do that and is making steps to change and have done a really good job, and I just don't think that's being celebrated enough. Is there a problem that would require restricting access to the West Country? Is that the core of your question? Okay. So let me ask the room that. By show of hands, how many people think that there actually is a problem that needs to be solved by restricting access? Yeah, some places. How many people think there's not really a problem? Or, I guess a better way of phrasing it is, the way to deal with the problem is to continue to do the steps that we're doing with our communities here, protecting the right spots, but with access to the backcountry. How many people think that? It's pretty self-explanatory.
Is there qualifications that these other groups would have that we don't already have the expertise in-house?
So the question was, is there qualifications the other groups have, I think I caught that we don't have in-house?
Give me that damn mic. If you look at the Yellowstone to Yukon, their compromise was that if we gave them a park up to the Forestry Trunk Road, they would come and help us on this and find trails in this bit to the east. And that was their compromise. Give and take, right? Compromise is give and take. So we give, they take. But they don't have any expertise in that. And, you know, we're in a room full of contractors. You know, we know how to build pipelines. We know how to build roads. You know, we've all done it. We've got equipment, been there, done that, worked in the forestry industry. The expertise right in this room is phenomenal. And as a community, we can do it. We don't need them.
Hi, Jason. And before you slap me as an environmentalist or anything
No, I
like
won't
that,
slap
I voted for you. I respect you. You know, it's great that you're, I would say, outspoken, right? Because you're going to be the one who will be vocal about everyone's, points of view. And everyone up there has some great initiatives. But just the other day in Globe and Mail, University of Alberta put out, there's this geographer, and since 1999, our West Country has had an increase in disturbance by 60%. You know, that's straight numbers. That's looking from an aerial perspective. I know sometimes we're all on the ground and we think everything's great. Everyone's happy driving around, but that's just another perspective, right? Things are not looking too good out there. And although there are a lot of these good initiatives, maybe I'll bring up the Alberta Off-Highway Vehicle Association's plan for that 4-point plan, right? A lot of that depends on a big amount of funding. A wilderness park, and I'm just trying to keep an open mind. If this happens, it's not a wilderness area that's different, right? So the wildland park is different. It might come with a big amount of money that can help us pay for this enforcement that we need, right? Because although a lot of people are in here say that they believe in protecting the environment, I'll go out there plenty of times and there's an immense amount of fording across the creeks. You go out in the fall when it's spawning period and people are still going across the creeks when there's a bridge right there. So I know education is lacking and it costs money to educate people. All this requires money if we want to keep it from being a park.
Gotcha.
But
First of all, thank you. You and my wife voted for me. Thanks a lot. Now, your question is fair. First, I'm going to tackle it in two separate sections. First is, do not take what we're saying up here is that we don't need to do work out there. I've been in a helicopter on the May long weekend several times. I know what's taking place back there. I talked about it earlier, we go back almost 10 years ago. It was pretty bad on the May long weekend. We were getting fatalities nonstop. There's a lot of chaos taking place and people not utilizing that resource appropriately. That is the work that these guys have been doing. The point is that we're going to have more success following what we've already tried with Clearwater Trail Initiative, where we're seeing drastic improvement on access in certain areas and making sure people know where not to go. The Tinda situation is a perfect example of that, where it was just shut to the public and nothing really changed. And then we brought in stakeholders that actually cared about it and have been able to build it up into something significant. The point is that we can do that. We've already proven it. We want to do that, but we can't go any further if the government keeps with this threat of not bringing access. Second, your point is right on a wildland park. There could be access for these type of things. It could we could have a situation like we already have in the Bighorn, where we're restricting access in appropriate areas, protecting certain waterways, protecting certain areas for animals at certain times in certain seasons. The point is nobody trusts it no more, because what has happened every other time that this process has went down is we ended up with it being closed. So the idea that we could bring in this park and that we'll have everybody will be able to participate in the appropriate ways has not happened elsewhere. And so for most people in this room, I suspect, when they hear what already is happening in the Bighorn, you already have restricted access, you already have basically a wildland park in all but name, the question then becomes, well, why do we have to go to the next level? What is the problem? Now, the government should be here right now, standing up here. Somebody from the minister's office should be standing up here and telling these people what goes on. But don't leave here thinking that we don't recognize that we have to protect those areas. I mean, these guys have done a tremendous amount of work putting bridges in the right areas, trying to protect bull trout habitat. We need to do that work, and we have to continue to do that work. But the government needs to start to help, or at the very least, remove the threat of taking away all that hard work.
The comment was made earlier about enforcement and the dollar figure involved in it. If this goes through, where's the money going to come from to enforce it then, if they can't enforce it now?
Well, this is the point. This idea that we could just create this park and that magically we can be able to enforce what's taking place in the West Country when the government hasn't been able to pull it off for a long time. Even, quite frankly, not just this current government has struggled with that issue. The short answer is they're not going to be able to. The fact is our province is facing $100 billion in debt by the next election, and there's money problems. Now, I don't want you to leave with me saying that I don't think there should be more enforcement. Enforcement is part of the issue that we're seeing out there. In fact, what I would say is stop making rules from Edmonton and start figuring out how to get people out here to enforce the rules they already got, because otherwise it's a real waste of time. Tim.
My question is, with the current government that we have and how it has actually listened to the people of Alberta, for what makes you think that they're going to listen to us now?
Well, Randy, it's a great question. And the fact is, the last time I stood in Dovercourt with this many people in the room was during Bill 6. And the reality was the largest protests in the history of the province were taking place at that time. And while we did get them to blink on the kids on the farm issue, which took a lot of work, and everybody should be proud of doing that work, they didn't blink for that. And quite frankly, Randy, if they weren't going to blink on that, I don't know what will make them blink. That is part of the problem. But the reality is we have to do it. We have to stand up for something that we care about. And we may be able to make them slow down. We may be able to make them have another look at the situation out here. But ultimately, I believe, and I don't know if these guys will be able to say it up here, but I believe the main job right now is to try to get to spring of 2019 and get this government out of here and get some people in here that are actually listening to the province. Tim.
How do we do that?
Well, how do you do that? Well, well, vote for me. No, they look. This constituency did the right thing last time. It did not vote for an NDP MLA. So this is a bigger conversation how we make sure we win a majority. We believe we have done many of the steps along the way to do that. We've united the parties. We've united the right of center side of the political spectrum. Every poll for the last year has us ready to go it. I mean, you know what polls are worth, though. But we're in a position where we can do that, and we're going to have to work hard for the next year. Any of you that are in this room from Red Deer, and I know I met many of you when you're coming in, you have a big role to play in that. You have 2 NDP MLAs that need to be fired because they're not listening to you. Any of you that have friends and family and other ridings like NDP MLAs, you need to get on the phone with them, and you got to make sure they get out and they help their guy or gal in that riding get elected and fire the other one that's not listening to them. And the MLAs that have been listening to you, send them back to Edmonton so we have a majority government, and we can fix this stuff once and for all. Yeah.
Didn't we read in the Mountaineer this week that the Y2Y and the Alberta Wilderness Association are not opposed to public access to this if it was created to a park? Did anybody else read that? But how long would that last?
The problem is the trust has been lost. So what happened in the castle was lots of conversations like that. We know where it ended up. So there's no trust there, first of all. So seeing it in the paper is not enough for people I'm talking to, because they've seen, the facts are not what their words have said in the past. Second, I heard somebody yell at, why have a park? The fact is the Bighorn is already a park to almost anybody who understands what's going on. It has restricted access. You heard Tom say they don't log in there. There's only certain quad trails that you could use at certain times of the year to protect animals that are in the area. It is already a park. So if the goal is not to restrict access to ATVs, then why do we need it to become a park? I think that's what most people would say. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
The Bighorn Backcountry is managed to ensure protection of the environment while allowing responsible and sustainable recreation use. 2017. It's protected.
It's a park. Like it is at restricted, and you come and you look at this brochure, the rules. We are there. We're at a park. There is restricted access. It is policed. There is, again, you quad up to certain places at certain times where the trails are open, and they're shut because of environmental reasons. If you talk to the average person walking around downtown Edmonton or downtown Calgary, you read that description, you explain the rules of what happened in the Bighorn, they would say that it was a park. But that's not what's being presented to them. But there's no industry in the Bighorn. Now, if some of the maps that we have seen that show, I've seen some draft maps that have it shut all the way to basically almost 10 kilometers, 16 kilometers from Rocky Mountain House. Certainly that would have a tremendous impact on forestry, as it did in the castle. It would have a tremendous impact on industry if that's the case. But the Bighorn specifically, which is the main thing that is talked about in this conversation right now, doesn't have industry in it already. It is a park.
Okay. Thanks, Jarrett, Cal, Jason. My name's Don Parsons. I'm out of Lacombe, Alberta. Thanks to all you folks for coming out. We went out on a couple of rides here this year in the West Country. I'm from Lacombe, Alberta, but I spent a lot of time out in the Nordegg and Rocky Mountain House area. And Cal took us out in a couple of spots in the Nordegg, guys, out to do some trail repairs. And of course, we seen a picture, all of us seen the picture on the board there of this low-lying wet area and how the trail got wider and wider. All of us know that the smaller units, they seem to want to move out of the bigger ruts. And of course, it really boils down to trail repair, fixing and maintaining and coming up for, because none of us, I'm going to use the word all. I'm a mountain bike guy. I do that part-time, skier, snowshoeing, quadding, fishing, just like a lot of everyone else that's in here. We all have a stake in the West Country. But when you talked about the registration, Jarrett was talking about the registration from OHVs, the $54 million. And of course, there was the little tally there about would we all want to throw in $20. Of course, I voted no to that because registration, when they brought that in for the OHVs, that got really strong, I think back in 1998 or 2001, OHV registration was supposed to be directed towards OHV trails. I travel around North America. My dad ran Parsons holiday tours out of Lacombe, Alberta, so we traveled pretty much all of North America from the top of Alaska to the tip of Mexico. And you're right, when we talk about the USA and how well they have done on their trail maintenance systems of getting the funds to build trails for OHV use. I don't want to just say OHV though. I also want to say the horse and the equestrian guys and the mountain bike guys, all users. So how do us that are all here today, how do we get involved?
Well, the biggest way to be involved at this moment is to communicate with Minister Phillips and the Premier and let them know your thoughts on this issue. I know it feels like we should be able to do more, and often people are frustrated, they want to do more. The reality is we're in a democracy. They have a majority government for the next 15 months till they have to face the ballot box. And I can tell you as a politician, when all those letters are coming in, it has a tremendous amount of impact. And I think the biggest thing that we want said right now is that we want to be part of the process. There already has been a process that's been taking place for a long time. We want it to be public. We want it to be transparent. And we believe we can accomplish accomplish all the goals that people have around the table in a productive way, but not if the minister continues to have secret meetings across the constituency and doesn't come and stand and say, here's where we want to go. And so I think, sorry, yeah, go ahead and clap. Do you guys have some letters ready? I think we have some form letters at the back, is that right? So there's some form letters on the back that already have the address to the Premier's office. Grab those on the way out. Email, make sure that your opinion is known. I can tell you, just you being here tonight is having an impact. The entire time that I was sitting up there, reporters are texting me, asking me what's going on in Dovercourt. There's some in the room that are saying, Jason, I don't think we're going to be able to get to you for an interview, so can you call me tomorrow? So it's good. They're gonna notice that this is a serious issue because everybody that's taking the time to participate. As for the funding, because that tied into the question, the funding question that you brought up, what the ultimate solution is, or whether it's from registration or not, the government, this is not a position of the United Conservative Party yet because these policies are being debated right now, but without a doubt, if we really want to move forward with this, the government has to start taking funding what we do in our West Country seriously. This cannot continue. All of us that have spent any time out there know that if we don't start putting money into enforcement, figuring out trails initiatives, this won't work.
These special interest groups that seem to be behind NDP and more green groups, is there anything we can do to bring it to the forefront more and educate people that these aren't, like, most of these aren't even Albertan groups. They're out of the country, most of them, and they have millions and millions of dollars behind them, right?
Sure, they have a ton of money behind them. Lots of them are not from our community. That's a fact. We can spend a lot of time pointing that out. A lot of people already do. Graham, my sense is our better plan is that we as a community and the people that care about this area stop wasting our time on them. And start working to get our message to the government and what we plan to do to make this work. Because we can spend all day fighting these guys. They got more money than we do. And so instead, let's just get on there and get on with managing our area.
I guess my question is, it's kind of been answered. You're talking about if the Conservatives get in, would all the registration money from the quads go back to the maintaining and not?
So I can't 100% answer that today, but what I can tell you is this, because I'm not in a position where I can. What I can tell you is this. We have a caucus retreat every year in the summer. This past year, I made sure that our caucus retreat was in Olds, and I took the entire caucus out to our West Country for a whole day. We had volunteers. We took them quadding. We showed them what we were dealing with. And the fact is, most of them have not seen it. I mean, I see it. This is my home just like you. This is my backyard. I get it. Most of my colleagues have no clue what's taking place back here in the issues. So they got to spend some time. They were very interested in that. This is probably going to be the next cabinet. That was productive. Jason Kenney, and I'm not going to tell you where. I mean, maybe we can play where in the world is Jason Kenney on the May long weekend, but he is coming camping with me this May long weekend because I recognize it's important that he sees what's taking place in the West Country and the importance for our government if we're fortunate enough to form government going forward. So what the ultimate solution will be on the funding model, I don't know. That's a broader conversation than just me. My colleagues have to be included, our membership, those type of things. But what I can tell you is we're doing all the right things. We're getting the right people that are going to be in positions to make decisions, to see what the problem is, and then hopefully we'll be able to come up with a solution in 15 months when we form government.
Hi, you guys were talking earlier about 45,000 to 65,000 people out on May long weekend. Compared to that, there's not that many here tonight compared to those numbers. So the education is not out there. Signage will help, but would there be room for an idea of Alberta Off-Highway Vehicle Association doing an education program that's mandatory for people to be going out there before they're out there, so they're not ripping by signs? They already know what they're going out there, how to go across the creeks. It's great that we're all here, but this is a small amount compared to the amount that are out there.
Without a doubt, though, I do have to say this is a heck of a turnout for Dovercourt on a February night. But I'm going to actually get some of the guys to answer your question on the signage. But this is the point that we saw with the Clearwater Trail Initiative. When we invested money in education, putting signs showing people where they should go and where they shouldn't go, they weren't required not to go there. There was no law where you put a sign saying you don't go there. But the thing is, most people listen. Because the fact is, if you're loading up from Calgary, you got the trailer, you got the kids in the back, you got the quads, you're coming here to play. That's going to happen no matter what. And then you pull in there and you see some signage, and you understand, oh, this isn't a very good spot. This is a good spot. It works. except for possibly sometimes when you see the May long weekends with the heavy traffic, and that's where we need to see more and more enforcement. Though I do have to say, give a lot of credit to Clearwater County, Mountain View County, the RCMP, the Sheriffs, Fish and Wildlife, who have done a great job with the May long task force. It's gotten significantly better. Would you agree, Adrian, in your area? And we have to continue to make sure we have that higher level of enforcement when you have a city the size of Red Deer living west of us, but recognize that after those high traffic season, it actually slows right back down.
Yeah. I was just thinking more of this on the funding side of it, because the proceeds of this could directly go back to Alberta Off-Highway Association in order to repair the trails and keep that up. Another thing is could there not be a voted voluntary tax possibly? I know our neighbors in the States for hunting, there's a voted voluntary tax on all sporting goods, firearms, ammunition, camo, everything like that. That proceeds go directly back into it. And that's something that could be huge if you're talking about quads and ATVs, all the accessories that go along with it, going back into maintaining these trails and getting it back to where we need it to be. And if we take this proactive approach, then people like Y2Y can't come stomp on our grounds, and we can show them that we're going to do it best.
What about the carbon tax? We can just use that money, right?
I knew that was coming. To answer your question, I think the point is that most people utilizing the area are willing to see some sort of, whether a registration fee or those type of things, as long as it's going to actually go into the West Country, it's not going to go into general coffers. So there has to be a process where that would be looked at. I think that point's clear. We hear it everywhere we go when we talk about this. Charlene, are you next? Yeah.
There's currently land that it's really unclear to see what that is, but there's currently land that is either deeded and or licensed as grazing allotment. I mean, this is people's livelihoods and stuff, and there's a lot of money been invested in this so that we can put livestock on it. People have hunting rights and stuff like that out there as well. I mean, that's going to affect a lot of that. Is there any answers you can give us besides the infomercial that we've had presently on quad usage and bridge and building and all that? We appreciate the time everybody puts in, but it seems like that's the majority of what this meeting is going to, is where people can ride quads and stuff. We're running out of grass to put cows on, too.
So to answer the question on the industry side, you look at the castle. That was the biggest issue. They basically kicked out Spray Lake Sawmill out of their forestry land use zone. What was that, sorry? Well, that's where I was going next. So in the end, once they did that, this is actually something the NDP didn't see coming when they closed it. All of a sudden, they ended up in court. Spray Lakes took them to court. Then now it's being settled outside of court. It's cost you a ton of money because they kicked them out of there. And yes, depending on what restrictions came with that park, it would have significant impact on industry. Leaseholders, I know there's a lot of leaseholders in the Forest Reserve that I see around here that I know that would be concerned about that. But the honest answer to you is we don't know what that restriction would look like coming out of cabinet. So yes, it could affect it. Maybe it won't.
I got one.
Oh, sorry, sure.
Is it on? Yeah. Yep. Jason, I was just thinking that probably you suggest to this crowd here tonight that it would be a good thing to join some of these user groups that are out there that are fixing the country up. The numbers mean a lot when you send in your information to the government saying we got 700 or 800 family memberships, or we got so many people, and besides that, the money it costs for a membership goes towards pumping out toilets, building roads, putting in bridges, maintaining campgrounds, all this kind of stuff. And I think the numbers that the membership and that kind of stuff for all the organizations makes a big difference on how you present this stuff to the government.
So that's a great point. We asked how you combat organizations that you're not comfortable with what they're presenting to the government. I can tell you those organizations you're concerned about are in Edmonton regularly, advocating for their position. And if you don't strengthen your organizations to care about what you care about as a stakeholder, they can't go up, one, and interact with the government. Second, it has a tremendous impact where it's helping with the environment, helping with these issues by participating. And then lastly, you're right, people pay attention when the Off-Highway Vehicle Association or Eastern Slopes for the horse guys or the outfitters, when those organizations are strong and well volunteered, that has a big impact with the government without doubt. There's power in numbers. And I think to the question we just had about trying to protect the industry that's in the Forest Reserve, the biggest thing that you have, this is my biggest advice to you, do not let them pick you off one at a time. If you stay together, that's where we have the most power to be able to push forward what we want back there. I'm just going to check if we missed anybody. Tim, you good? Oh, one more.
Yeah, Jason, I'd just like to bring up one. It's maybe a tiny bit off topic, but we've recently been told that we're going to lose an awful lot of our fishing opportunities in this area. My suggestion the other day at the Bighorn meeting was that to try to do anything but shut it down, and because a 5-year shutdown for the government could be forever.
So first of all, I need to recognize there are some species issues that are at risk in certain watersheds here, and I think everybody wants to make sure that we maintain those. I'm an avid angler. I want that to happen. Now, with that said, all 100% shutdown always concerns me because I go back to the grizzly situation where we saw 100% shutdown, and now we're struggling to get a hunt and a management tool open in the right areas where we're seeing blown up populations. So that's my concern with 100% shutdown. I actually talked to the ministry about that last time I talked about that. With that said, I do want to make it clear, we do, as an angler, and many people in this room I know will agree, we want to make sure we're protecting the species in there. But if we shut her down from fishing all the way, sometimes it's hard to reverse it for sure.
Just one comment. Really, there's no public outcry to form a park, period, anywhere in Alberta. So the paying public, the voters are not asking for this. This is created. It's a new thing that's being created. So you, as the MLA, you keep talking about an action plan. What you talked about delaying. So how can we delay? Do you help form a group? And you talk about unifying the group. So who's going to unify the groups? Who's going to put everybody together to make them into one entity that's going to, create an injunction against the government to delay them? So how do we delay them? What plan would you have for that?
Okay, so an injunction would be the later steps of it. The fact is we couldn't even be talking about a court process or anything along those lines right now because we don't know what they brought forward. So you would need legal advice and all sorts of things at that point. In the meantime, though, we need to get behind our groups who are uniting. They're working together, which is great because sometimes they don't always work together, quite frankly. And we can get involved in them, get the letters on the Premier's desk, get the letter on the Minister's desk. And the biggest thing is saying, we don't want you to make this decision with a bunch of bureaucrats up in Edmonton. We want you down here talking to our community and the people that utilize this area going forward. That is the only thing, and it is important, that we can do right now at this moment. If they come forward with a plan, then we as the opposition can start to look at if there's other options to try to be able to advocate. You're getting into protest, those type of things as well, and then also work with these type of organizations on legal action. You can't do that, though, off of a rumor. You just can't.
Just before everybody else takes off here, Jason, I'd just like to ask, we all came here, I guess, looking for maybe some direction that we could take as individuals. I know it's been recommended to email Ms. Phillips and Ms. Notley, and I'm pretty sure everyone in this room, as I have, has sent several emails and received absolutely no return. I like the idea of banding all the user groups together, but can you suggest anything other than what we're already doing to really get in the way of this epidemic that's coming towards us?
First of all, they should be responding to you. I apologize that they're not. It's not acceptable for the Premier and the Minister not to respond to you on this issue. I can't answer for them on that. What we will do is we head back to the legislature. We, as your MLAs, will be raising this issue as your representatives in Edmonton. I would say as this continues forward, if the government doesn't respond to the fact that, I'm going to send a letter to the minister probably tomorrow, say I had this haul in Dovercourt. It's clear to me that my constituents have not heard from you. They want to hear from you, and let's get you down here. Let's have a conversation. If they don't respond to that, we will ramp it up as best we can in the media to point out that they're not talking to you, and then we have to start working with our groups to start talking about whether or not we're bringing a bunch of people to Edmonton, we're bringing this to question period, those type of things. That is the reality. We are in a democracy. We're not talking about overthrowing the government, but what we're talking, yeah. But you have to have your voice. You have to have your voice heard. Now, let me tell you this. I promise you, they're getting a lot of letters, and I also promise you that is having an impact. The biggest thing you can do right now, though, to have the #1 impact on the letter thing, is get a hold of your friends that live in NDP MLA ridings and flood their offices with letters. Make them go to the Premier's office and say, why the heck are you not answering my constituents' emails, right? So, Canmore Banff, Red Deer, those type of places, get people doing it. That's it. I wish I had a magic wand that could do something beyond that, but the reality is they have a majority government. Okay, guys, thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate it. Travel safe.